Good evening. I realize y'all came out here to see the big hero of the war. And I'm appreciative of that. But truth be told, he ain't here. He's under a rock somewhere in Arlington, if he was lucky. They found enough pieces. His blood was shed on every beachhead, frozen field, and forest, from here to hell and halfway up Pillbox Hill. Or maybe he came home, only missing a few fingers. At night, he sings his kid to sleep. Nobody knows his name. I'm the face. Only. And for that, I'm honored. Them medals, all them damn medals, those are his medals. The story, it's their story. I guess my story. This is a story as best I can tell it. We're on a hill just inland from the invasion beaches of Sicily. A soldier sits on the rock. His helmet is off. The hot sun glints through his coppery red hair. He wipes the sweat from his brow and leans forward in thought. We're taking a break. We loosen the straps of our gear, sit down, take a load off. It's my first day of combat, and so far the action has been undramatic and disappointingly slow. Just leave it to the Army to get things fouled up. If the landing schedule had not gone snafu, we'd have come ashore with the assault wave. And that's what I'd wanted. I had primed myself for the big moment. And then the timing got all snarled in the pre-dawn confusion, and we came in late, chugging ashore like a bunch of clucks on a ferry boat. The assault wave had already taken the beach. The battle had moved inland. So for the last several hours, we've been trampling over hills and fields with no direct contact with the enemy. The landing wasn't exactly an excursion, though. There was some big stuff smashing about. And from several points came the rattle of small arms fire. But we soon got used to that. We got used to that. A shell crashes on a nearby hill. The earth quakes. The black smoke boils. Red-haired soldier imitating Jack Benny's Rochester cries out, "Hey, boss, a cargo of crap just landed on Pigtail Ridge." And we all laugh. "Hey, boss, change that name to No Tail Ridge. Why, the tail go with the cargo." And we laugh again. The second shell is different. Something terrible and immediate about its whistle makes my skin crawl. I grab my helmet, I flop down on my stomach, and the explosion is thunderous. Steel fragments just whiz past my head. The earth jumps up and hits me right in the face. I look up. The sour fumes have caused an epidemic of coughing. "Hey, boss, the cargo!" And then the voice stops. And we all see it. Red-haired soldier just topples from the rock. There's blood dripping out of his nose and his mouth. Belsky, a veteran of fighting in North Africa, is the first one to reach him. And one look from his very professional eyes enough for me. He turns to a soldier and says, "Get his ammo. He won't be needing it. And by God, you will." And he looks at the rest of us and says, "Okay, now you clowns probably figure out how this game is being played. It's being played for keeps. On your feet." And so it happens as easy as that. You see, 1 second you're sitting on a rock lost in thought. In the distance, a gun slams and you're dead. Maybe my idea about combat is all convoluted. I mean, how do you pit skill against skill when you can't even see the enemy? Where's the glory in blistered feet and a growling stomach? And where in the hell is all of this expected adventure? Well, whatever comes, it's my own fault because I asked for it. I always wanted to be a soldier, see. The years roll back in my mind. I'm 12 years old picking cotton in the blistering heat of Central Texas. I follow the hands of the old man. They are calloused. They're streaked with dirt. They look like claws cupped around a match flame as he lights a cigarette, takes a draw, and coughs. It's the gas, he says. Been nearly 18 years. It's still hanging on. I said, but you knowed where they was, I said. Oh, sure, I knowed where they was, he says. Any idiot woulda. It was still early in the morning when the Germans came crawling through the field while they knocked the dew off the wheat. Every blessed one of them left a dark streak behind, gave their positions away. Well, what'd you do? Well, what have you done? I lined up my sights on that machine gun. I waited. A machine gun? Oh, yeah. Whew. It's a devil's own weapon. When they came through the patch, you could see him plain. There was nothing to it. I just pressed the trigger, let him have it. Fascinated, I glance at his hands and pick out the trigger finger. You killed him? Well, it didn't do him no good. Did they shoot at you? Oh, now what do you think? This was war. But I kept my head down along all right, got all along all right, till the night they throwed over the gas. We didn't even get the alarm till I already breathed in a lungful. What was they like? Who, the Germans? I don't know, I never took time to ask them. They were shooting at us, so we were shooting at them. But you whooped them. Oh yeah, well, we whooped them all right. But it wasn't easy. They was hard fighters. Don't you never kid yourself about that. Someday I aim to be a soldier. A soldier, he says. What the hell for? I don't know. A soldier. You want to fight something, he says? Start fighting these weeds. No, this was nothing like the dream I had as a child. That day I followed the veteran of World War I into the field. The sun was blistering hot. Rows of cotton seemed endless. But I soon forgot all about the heat and the labor. The weeds became my enemy. My hoe was a trusty weapon. I was in a faraway battlefield where bugles blew and banners streamed and men charged gallantly across flaming hills, where the temperature always stood at 80. Our side was always victorious. The dying were but impersonal shadows. Wounded never cried. Where the enemy bullets always miraculously missed me, while my trusty rifle, bam, bam, forever hit home. I was only 12 years old, and that dream was my one escape from a grimly realistic world. We were sharecrop farmers. Now, to say the family was poor would be an understatement. Poverty dogged our every step. Year after year, the babies came till there were 9 of us living, 3 dead. Just keeping food in our stomachs and clothes on our back was an ever-present problem. My mother was a sad-eyed, silent woman who toiled endlessly. Our situation, though, is not to be blamed on the social structure of things. If my father had exercised more foresight, his family would have fared much better. He was not lazy, but he had a genius for not considering the future. And one day he just left us, up and walked out. We never saw him again. My mother, attempting to keep her brood together, worked harder than ever, but gradually she grew sadder and weaker. And when I was 16 years old, she died. And there was no family to speak of. The 3 youngest were thrown into an orphanage. The rest of us just scattered about our individual ways. I worked for a while in a filling station, then a radio repair shop. Whew. God knows where my pride came from, but I had it. It was always getting me in trouble. My temper was explosive. I was always trying to settle with my fists what I had assumed fate had set against me. When my mother died, I was more than ever determined to enter the military service. When the Japanese hit Pearl Harbor, I was half wild with frustration. I mean, here was a war itself, and I was too young to enlist. And I was sure the war would be over in a couple months, and I'd be robbed of this adventure that had haunted my imagination. So on my 17th birthday, I doctored up my birth certificate, make it look like I was 18. Went down to Marine Corps recruiting station. Marine Corps, they were the toughest of the lot. And I was looking for trouble. But then Marines, see, they was looking for Marines. And my 5'5", 112 pounds didn't particularly impress them. I tried the paratroopers next. Now that office was a bit more sympathetic. The sergeant didn't dismiss me out of hand, but he did suggest that I might want to think about loading up on bananas and milk before I weighed in. So this pride of mine was taking a terrible beating. The infantry finally accepted me, and I wasn't particularly overjoyed. The infantry was too commonplace for my ambition. Thus, with a pocket full of holes, a head full of dreams, and ignorance beyond my years, I boarded a bus for the induction center. I'd never been more than 100 miles from home, nor had I any idea what I was getting into. First day of close order drills, pass out cold. Commanding officer tries to shove me into cook and baker's school where the going be a little less rough. God, that was the supreme humiliation. To reach for the stars and end up stirring a pot of sea rations. I said, I won't do it. I'll go to the guardhouse first, but by God, I will not do that. And my stubbornness paid off. I was allowed to keep my combat classification, and the Army was spared another fourth-class cook in its ranks. So I stick to my guns, see. In the spring of 1943, I landed in North Africa as a replacement for a combat infantry company. Now, the war in this sector is pretty much over, so instead of any combat, we all received another long, monotonous period of training. And then one day, though, the order comes. We're supposed to go into combat in the Tunis area, and by God, we were excited. We checked our gear, double-checked our gear, cleaned our weapons, double-cleaned our weapons. We prayed, we cursed. We were ready. Then last minute, the order was canceled. So here I am. On the shores of Sicily, my first day of combat, and we are under fire. In the distance, the rattle of an enemy machine gun can be heard, and that makes us all a little nervous. There's this railroad track, see, along which down the way the enemy is dug in with the machine gun crew. Suddenly, the machine gun goes quiet. And that makes us nervous, too. So we glance at Belsky's worried face. He looks around, and he whispers, "Get ready. We're going over the track." Olson's mouth sags, and the look of fear in his eyes is sickening. The order's passed around in hoarse whispers. "When you get the signal, make a run for it. Don't stop for nothing till you find cover on the other side of the track." Belsky looks at his watch. He raises his hand. He gives us a signal, and we run. Bram! From the corner of my eye, I see two fellas from the center of the platoon just reel back and fall dead. And I run. I hear the crackle of rifles and the blast of grenades. The blast of grenades. And I run. I get to the railroad tracks. I jump over. I find a ditch. I dive in. And I'm safe. For the time being, I'm safe. The next day, I find myself in the front of the company with a group of scouts. We flush these two Italian officers. Now, they should have surrendered, but instead, they mount these magnificent white horses. They start to gallop off. And my reaction is instinctive and instantaneous. I just drop to one knee, I fire twice, and they topple off the horses, just roll over and lie still. And then a lieutenant comes up to me, starts yelling at me. He says, "Now, why did you do that?" And I said, "Do what? What'd I do?" He said, "You shouldn't have fired." And I said, "Why not?" I said, "That's our job, isn't it? I mean, they'd have killed us if they had the chance. That's their job, isn't it?" "Oh, hell. I guess you did the right thing." Later, I find that such mental confusion amongst new men is very, very common. In the Army, see, in training, you're taught to act tough, talk tough, be tough. After a while, you actually think you might be tough. But it isn't easy to get over the notion that human life is sacred. That lieutenant had yet to accept the fact that we'd been placed in the field to deal out death. But I have. If there was any doubt in my mind, it began to disappear when I saw that red-haired soldier topple from the rock, and it vanished altogether when those two fellas crumpled by the railroad track. So now I've shed my first blood. I feel no guilt, no qualms, no remorse. Just a weary indifference that'll haunt me the rest of the war, rest of my life. Sometime later, we find ourselves in a difficult situation. The enemy is entrenched and they are determined. We're caught in a crossfire of mortar and artillery, and we have to back up to reorganize. And again, we storm forward. Again, we're hit with this incredible barrage, and we fall back. Olson is the first one to crack. He starts crying. He runs up to the CO. He throws his arms around him, and he's screaming, "I can't go back, my God. No, I can't go back. Don't make me go back. Don't make me, please, dear God, don't make me go back." And the CO tries to calm him down, but Olson will not stop bawling. So he's sent back to the rear area. And we watch him go with hatred in our hearts. Sometime later, it's Thompson. Thompson fails to return after a routine mission, and not knowing if he's been killed or even been captured, I have to report him missing. 3 days later, he's found cowering in an abandoned hut in the rear area. He's a deserter. He's placed under arrest, thrown in a prison stockade. So what I guess happened is his nerves just broke, and he couldn't bear to face the enemy guns again. Thompson was not a coward. But from the Army's point of view, see, his offense was a very serious matter indeed, and could set a disastrous precedent for weary, frightened men who know that they must hurl their body against a very determined enemy until death or a wound honorably relieve them of duty. See? I'm called to the rear area to testify in the court-martial proceedings against Thompson. And I think to myself, which of us knows if our own nerves won't break? And we'll find ourselves doing something equally as foolish as Thompson. But then I think, is his action, see, not also a crime against us, his fellow soldiers, see? Who know that hell or high water, we must stand our ground. And I have no answer. My testimony at the court-martial proceedings is brief, factual, to the point. And Thompson is sentenced to 20 years. Now, the Jeep that takes Thompson back towards the prison stockade has to go toward the front lines for a bit, so I hop in for a ride. And we ride for a while in silence, and I look at him and I say, I had to report you. I'm not blaming you, he says. I said, I didn't know you could have been killed, you could have been captured. I didn't know. I'm not blaming you, he says. So we ride on for a while in silence. When we finally get to where I get out, I look at him. He looks at me. We shake hands. And then we start laughing. And I say, I don't know what's so funny, but I really do feel sorry for you. He says, sorry for me? I feel sorry for you. Me, I got just 20 years. If I serve the entire sentence, I'll be just 39 when I get out. But you, what about you? You poor son of a bitch, he says. You go back to the front line. You attack. If you live, you attack again. And you keep on attacking until you're dead. What's 20 years to a corpse? And I think, he's got a point. I start walking toward the front line. It's getting late. It's spring, Italy, so of course it starts to rain. Here's a story, different kind of story. You don't get to tell many of these. I remember once I was walking in the rear area. This was in Italy, and it was late at night, and it was raining. And I was with Novak. He was a hell of a soldier. He was a Pole, came to the U.S. in search of the American dream. By God, he loved America as much as anybody. Anyway, it's dark, it's late, we're hungry, we're getting wet. We got to find ourselves a place to sleep. And Novak, he spots this big old haystack in this field. See? And he says, come on, we're going to sleep in this haystack. He says, it's going to be warm, it's going to be dry, it's going to be soft as a feather bed. So we run over to the haystack, we start digging ourselves out a place to sleep. And we hear this ruckus coming from the other side of the haystack. And we figure, well, a couple other GIs, I guess they had the same idea. But it's a big haystack, there's plenty of room for everybody. So we dig ourselves a spot, and we're about to go to sleep when we see these two straw-laden characters, see? Two German soldiers, right? They come from around this, and they look at us, and we look at them. I swear to God, we looked at each other for half a minute before we had the sense to run. Novak, my God, he was a hell of a soldier. We lost him in be damned if I can remember where we lost Novak. My best friend was Brandon. Brandon was a hell of a fella, yeah. One always felt a silent strength in his presence. Brandon was this tall, quiet fella from the hills of Kentucky. He was the salt of the earth. I swear to God, if the gates of hell burst open, Brandon would not leave his post. Once we were walking, this was also in Italy, we were walking down this road in the rear area, and Brandon, he spots this chicken in the field, and he just up and shoots it. So I run over, I scoop it up, we hide behind this wall where I pluck it and gut it. Now in the Army, see, in the Army you can destroy an entire village and be patted on the back for your efforts. But the theft of a chicken, that's a serious matter indeed. The Army says no looting, and the Army means it, no looting. Now I'm in favor of just broiling the thing over an open fire, but Brandon thinks we have to be much more careful. He's afraid someone's going to see the fire. He says, we got to wait till tonight, till it's dark. We'll find ourselves a friendly little farmhouse. So that night we knock on this farmhouse, and we meet this chubby, sweet-faced old farmer and his very, very suspicious wife. But this is war-torn Italy. And the gift of a fresh chicken, see, is a welcome boon indeed. So they invite us in. She cooks up the chicken. We eat our chicken. We drink their wine. We have a marvelous time. Ain't nobody understanding a word anybody says, but by God, we had a hell of a time. You do make friends. I mean, you do. It's only natural. But mostly with the fellows you move up with. Once you lose a few close friends, you tend to stay more to yourself. That's just natural, too. I remember once we were trying to take this hill. We called this hill Pillbox Hill, probably because of the shape of the hill. And the Germans got the whole company pinned down at the bottom of the hill. And there are three of us in the forward position. And there are machine gun bullets just flying everywhere. And I look up and I see Valero leaning over the body of his best friend Constantino. And when Constantino speaks, he's got a bubbly kind of voice, and that tells me he's got blood in his throat, see. And he says, you won't forget. Oh, no, I ain't going to forget, pal, says Constantino. But you're going to go home. Hey, the medics are coming. You're going home. Don't try to kid me. I know the score. I'm through. Yeah, that's what I say, pal. You're through with this war. You're going home, Valero. Yeah, pal? Don't leave me just yet. Oh, I ain't gonna leave you, pal. You still got my mother's address? Oh, yeah, pal, I got it right here in my pocket. You want to see it? You won't forget to visit. Oh, no, I'll be seeing her. I'll be seeing you. We're going to have some big times when we get home. You tell her that. And then he just dies before he even finishes the sentence. A sad softness comes into Valero's typically hard-lined Italian face, and he's quiet for a moment. When he finally looks up, the softness is all gone. His face is just hard, mean lines. He looks off in the direction of the German fire. And then, holding his BAR for firing from the hip, he stalks up the hill. I yell at him to get down, but he won't listen to me. I hear the crack of a rifle. His helmet just spins on his head, and he's dead. And now I'm all alone on this hill, and the enemy has discovered my position. I start to run out of this ditch, and I run into two Germans, head on. And they hesitate for a moment, in surprise probably, but that's their mistake. I kill them both with my carbine. And then I locate a group of krauts in a series of foxholes over by the forest. And we exchange sniper fire till I give out ammunition. So I head back down the bottom of the hill. If I'm going to compete with their automatic weapons, I need more firepower. I locate a small machine gun crew. They are pinned down at the bottom of the hill, and I seize their weapon and I drag it up the hill alone. Now, I do this alone, not because I want to be some hero. I do this alone because I reason that if one man can do the job, why risk more? Now, at first I try to set the gun up in a ditch where I have some cover, but from that angle, the bullets are just going to fly harmlessly over the heads of the German. So in spite of lack of cover, I drag the machine gun out and I set it up on the hill directly in front of their positions. Now the advantage is mine. I can shoot right up into their positions. But for the Germans to shoot down at me, they've got to stand up and expose themselves. But before I even get the gun set up, the bullets are just popping within inches of my head. I set it up, I estimate their distance, and I throw a stream of lead into anything that remotely resembles a kraut. The screaming cries from the foxhole is too much to stand, so I rake their positions again and again until they are quiet. And then I go up the hill to explore the area. A soldier no more than 20 years old sitting in the bottom of a foxhole. I'm about to give him a burst when I notice the entire left side of his jaw has just been shot away. He tries to say something to me, but when he moves his mouth, nothing happens, but a lot of blood just splurts out of this severed artery. And I brace myself against sentiment because there's nothing I can do for this boy except put him out of his misery. But I can't pull the trigger. His eyes, already filling with the shadows of death, just plead for more life. So I step around him, I examine the other foxholes, a body squirms, and I give it a burst just as a precaution. And then all of a sudden, a machine gun opens up on me from my left. I have to hit the ground. I wait a second, then I jump up, I blast him with my carbine, and I look for a place to hide. I find a ditch, I dive in the ditch, and I see Brandon there. I'm like, what the hell are you doing here? He says, what am I doing? What the hell are you doing here? You trying to win yourself a wooden cross? I said, where are the other fellas? He said, the Germans got them all pinned down at the bottom of the hill. I found out that you were all up here all alone. And I said to myself, well, that Murph is trying to hog himself all the glory. Can't let you do that. And then he laughs and he says, come on. They can kill us, but they can't eat us. And so we start out this ditch, see, and we run into two more Germans head on, and they shoot at us point blank. And one of the bullets clips off the bottom part of Brandon's right ear. But he doesn't even flinch. He kills them both with 2 shots from his carbine. We dive back in the ditch, and I examine his wound, and by God, there is blood. All down his neck, his shirt, everywhere. I mean, there's blood everywhere. I say, you better get back down the bottom of the hill, get this thing dressed. He says, what? And leave you up here to have all the fun? Can't do that. Then he tosses me a clip of ammo, says, come on. Where do we go from here? Well, this ditch has become decidedly unhealthy. There are hand grenades popping everywhere, and some machine gun somewhere is trying to feel out our position. So what we do is we just climb up the edge of this ditch, see, and we locate the enemy machine gun crew, and they're just up the ways a little bit next to this big old foxhole. So we jump up, we blast them with our carbines, we make a run for the foxhole. We get to the foxhole, we see 2 German soldiers sitting in the bottom of it, holding their head like this. I swear to God, they never knew what hit them. We lower our carbines, we shoot them both in the head, we dive on top of their body just as the machine gun opens up on us. Now Brandon is laughing, and he's wiping the blood off his face, and he says, now how in the hell you expect we're going to get ourselves out of this situation? I said, I do not know, but I am open to suggestions. He says, well, perhaps we should have looked it up in the field manual before we left. So what we do, see, is we take our helmets, see. We take our helmets off, and then we raise them above the edge of the foxhole to draw the enemy machine gun fire, which we do. And we see that the bullets are going about 1.5 feet over our helmets. So we reason that at ground level, our heads are going to be relatively safe. So we crawl up and we blast their positions with our carbines till we give out ammunition, and we dive back in the hole, and we wait. And our action is met with silence. But we wait. And then we hear, comrade. And Brandon crawls up and he peeks and he says, oh, they're waving a white handkerchief. I'll go get them. And I said, no, you don't go get them. You can't trust them. He says, oh, Murph, come on. You're getting to be a plumb cynic. Them boys just had enough. And then he stands up in full view. And that's what they were waiting for. And I hear the slash of the machine gun, and he falls back down right into my arms. And his last breath, he says, Murph. Now I'm in this foxhole on top of these 2 dead germs. I have my comrade laying on top of me. And so carefully, very, very gently, I try to maneuver my body out from under Brandon because I fear that any sudden movement might cause his wounds to hemorrhage. And I grab his wrist. I feel for a pulse. I don't feel nothing. I start screaming for a medic. But I might as well be screaming at the moon because I'm all alone on this hill, and there is smoke, and there are fire, and the explosions are pounded inside of my skull. And then I get the curious notion that he needs some fresh air. And so I pull his body out of the foxhole, and I lean him up against a cork tree. Now, why I'm not shot doing that, I'll never know. Instinctively, I turn my head and I see a machine gun being trained on me not 3 yards from my position. I dive back in the hole, I pull a pin on the grenade, I throw it, and at the pound I come up with my carbine, but the grenade has done its work. The 2 men manning the gun are dead. One has his chest just torn wide open, the other has this huge hole where his eye used to be. So I examine their weapon for any damage. And then holding it like a BAR for firing from the hip, I stalk up the hill. Now I remember the rest of this like I remember a nightmare. My brain, though, is coldly logical and alert, but my whole being is intent on killing. Later, the fellows at the bottom of the hill tell me that I yell curses at them for not coming up to help me. But I don't remember any of that. When I finally find the crew that killed Brandon, they are concentrated on targets at the bottom of the hill, and they don't even see me. And so I take my time, I aim, and then I riddle their body with bullets, and I don't stop while there is a quiver left in them. Soon all resistance to this hill has been knocked out, and the company meets me at the top of the hill to reorganize. And I'm talking to the men, and then it sounds like the men's voices are just coming through some fog. And I feel weak, and I got to sit down. I tell the men, go ahead, go on. I'll catch up. And when they've gone through the trees, I go back down the hill to find Brandon. I go through his pockets, make sure that all his personal effects are secure. I find that photograph of his daughter with the little pigtails. And I take his pouch and I make a little pillow for his head. And then I just sit there and I just cry like a little baby. I never got close to no one after that. You know, it's funny, you spend your entire wartime experience trying to avoid getting shot, and then something happens and you don't care. You don't care. You don't care if you catch a bullet right like that. And I guess that's how I felt which is why this next story is even possible. It's January 26, 1945. We're outside the small French village on our march to Germany. The Germans, perhaps sensing defeat, are more ferocious than ever. All night long we try to dig ourselves in, but the frozen earth makes this impossible. It's daybreak, see. And to the infantrymen, dawn is a critical hour. It's a time that you attack or that you are attacked. Now, our support is yet to arrive, so our attack's been delayed, so we're expecting the Germans are going to attack us. I mean, they have to. We're in the butt end of a rough-shaped U formed by these finger-like extensions of the woods stretching out towards the village about a mile down the road. During the night, 2 tank destroyers move into position. They're parked right there on the road next to us. The crew's asleep, but I wake up the lieutenant in charge. I tell him, I say, you better get off this road. You are a sitting duck. He says, I can't get off the road. If I get off the road, I'm afraid I'm going to get stuck in that ditch. I said, yeah, but you can't stay here. You got no cover. He climbs out of the turret. He looks around. He says, don't worry about it. If the Germans attack, look, we can see them coming a mile away. And I say, well, it's your funeral. On the opposite side of the road, our machine gun crew is setting up their weapon under a giant tree. We haven't much ammo. Our entire right flank is exposed, so we can't hold off and attack for very long. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I see 6 tanks rumble into view. 6. Now, it's obvious to me that what they intend is an encircling movement to surround and destroy us. I yell to my men to get ready, and then wave after wave of these tiny little white dots. Barely discernible against the backdrop of snow, start moving across the field. It's a German infantry, see, wearing snow capes, and they're moving in formation. I yell to my men to get ready. One of the tank destroyers starts up its engine to maneuver in position, but sure enough, it falls right off the road into the ditch, and at that angle, its turret gun is completely useless. The driver hits the gas, the tank just wallows further into the ditch. The engine dies. The crew scrambles out and take off for the rear area. I grab a map, estimate the enemy's position, seize a field telephone. This is Murphy. We are under attack. I need some artillery. Get me smoke at coordinates 30.5-60 and tell those Joes to shake the lead out. Attack, he says. Attack. How many Krauts? I said, I don't know. 6 tanks that I can see, several hundred foot soldiers supporting. Good God. He says, are they close? I said, well, they're close enough. Can I have the artillery, please? I drop the receiver just as the initial barrage hits, and it is murderous. The tree explodes. A machine gun crew is knocked out. The second tank destroyer is hit head on. 3 of its crew members are killed instantly. The remainder scramble out of this burning turret and take off for the rear area. Now, at this point, I know that this is lost. There is smoke, there's fire, there are shells pounded everywhere, and I know we can't win. I pick up the phone. Okay, 200 right, 200 over, and fire for effect. Our counter barrage is right on the nose. I see a wave of German infantrymen just disappear in a cloud of smoke and snow. But they keep on coming. By God, they just keep on coming. Phone rings. How close are they now? I say 50 over and keep firing for effect. Now that curtain of artillery must be kept between us and the enemy. The tanks are now close enough to rake our position with machine gun fire. Of the 128 men that began the drive, not 40 remain, and I'm the last of 7 officers. Trying to stop these tanks with small arms fire is just useless. I yell to my men to start pulling back. What about you, they say. I say, I'm going to stay here with the phone and call in the artillery as long as I can. Now get the men back and keep them all together. And the phone rings. How close are they now? I say 59 over and keep firing for effect. The company's pulling back. And I look up and I see the men are hesitating. And I think, what are you doing? What the hell are you doing? Get the hell out of here, and that is an order. Reluctantly, the men start stumbling back into the woods. And the phone rings. How close are they now? I say 50 over and keep firing for effect. I drop the receiver just as the initial barrage hits, and it is murderous. The second tank destroyer is hit, its crew members take off, and everybody is dead. The initial wave is now within, 200 yards of me. I grab the phone, 50 over, and keep firing for effect. I drop the receiver, I pick up my carbine, and I just start sniping at anything that moves till I give out ammunition. Now I'm all alone on this field. Advancing on me are 6 tanks, several hundred infantrymen, countless machine guns. Everywhere you look is smoke and fire and burning and explosions. And I have no alternative but to run. And so I turn to run, and I notice this burning tank destroyer, see? And on its turret is a perfectly good machine gun with several cases of ammunition. And so I change my mind. I grab the phone, and I drag it up on top of the tank destroyer. Now, Lieutenant, the body of the lieutenant, the one who I was speaking to earlier in the morning, is sprawled over the hatch. So I have to drag his body out and dump it into the snow. The phone rings. How close are they now? I say 50 over, and keep it coming, keep it coming. How close are they to your position, he asks. I said, what, you want to talk to him? You want to talk to him? Well, hang on, I'll let you talk to him. Now the gun has not been damaged, and when I press the trigger, the clatter of the machine gun is like sweet music, and I see 3 Germans just crumple in the snow. And then, bam, I feel this incredible shudder. And I realize I've just sustained a direct hit. Now, this tank destroyer is loaded with gasoline and ammunition, and a direct hit could set off a massive explosion, and that would not be good. I grab the phone, and he's screaming. He's going, Lieutenant, are you still alive? I said, momentarily. And I open up the map. I said, correct fire battalion. Then, bam, I'm hit again. And he's screaming, Lieutenant, by God, are you still alive? I said, for the time being, correct fire, 50 over. I feed another belt of cartridges in the machine gun. The smoke is so thick you can barely see through it. The stench of human flesh fills my nostrils. But when the wind blows the smoke aside, I'm borne to any object that stirs. Evidently, this gun has thrown the enemy into confusion. They can't locate my position. Later, I'm told that this tank destroyer loaded with gasoline and ammunition is expected to blow any second. That's probably why the Germans gave it a wide berth and why they couldn't even conceive of somebody using it for cover. But I don't think about any of that right now. Right now, I'm only intent on saving my men. And if it means killing every kraut in sight, that's what I'm going to do. I'm conscious only that the smoke and the turret afford me good cover. And that for the first time in 3 days, my feet are warm. I spot a German sergeant in a roadside ditch about 30 yards from my position. I wheel the barrel of the gun on him just as a billow of smoke comes in between us. So I wait. I wait a minute, 2 minutes. When the smoke finally clears, I see 12 Germans huddled together looking for something. Looking for something. You're damn right they're looking for something. They're looking for me. I press the trigger and the 12 bodies just crumple into the blood-red snow. I pick up the phone. 50 over and fire for effect. Now the concussion lands within 50 yards of this tank destroyer, and I can feel it in my face. The screaming of the Germans caught in the middle is the stuff nightmares are made of. The enemy tanks, reluctant to advance any further without infantry support, begin to rumble back toward the village. I grab the phone. Correct fire battalion, 50 over. 50 over, he screams, 50 over. He says, that's your own position. I said, I don't care, that's my last change. 50 over, and that's an order. Now, the concussion lands so close to the tank destroyer, it almost knocks me off. I have the receiver of the phone in my hand, but the entire apparatus has just been blown to pieces. I start to fold up the map, and I realize that it is just riddled with shell fragments. I check my hands, my body, my face, but I haven't been hit. And then I feel this dull, throbbing pain going down my leg. I look down, my entire pant leg is just dripping in blood. And then just as if I were under the effect of some drug, I just slide off the tank destroyer and walk in the woods. Never look back. I figured if the Germans want to shoot me, let them. I am too tired from exhaustion and fear to even care. And so I'm one of the lucky ones, right? Right? I'm one of the lucky ones because I survived. At what cost? The effects of war on a man cannot be easily measured or easily treated. They live deep down. And like the enemy, they hide only to emerge much later with deadly vengeance. It's been what, 25 years? 25 years. I remember like it was this afternoon. I've been a lucky man. I had a lucky life, I guess. All in all, I'm a good man. Flawed, certainly. Scarred. Scarred from the inhuman experience of war. Most definitely. Some people, I am a dear, wonderful friend. And that's a fact. To some people, I'm just a mean, miserable son of a bitch. And that's a fact. I'm a decent father. I'm a lousy husband. I have done things unimaginable things. And I'll have to live with that the rest of my life. I hear what they say about me. They say, oh, that Murphy's so shut down. He has no feelings. He never lets his feelings out. You're damn right. I don't let my feelings out. I dare not. You know, we ask so much of our fighting men and women. We think so little of the price they pay. Price paid in life, sure, blood, limbs lost. A price paid with the insanity of living with having done the unspeakable. So when I see them, I say thank you. I say thank you. Because living or dead, they have already paid the ultimate price. Thank you, folks. You can't do this unless you get permission from the source. And I have 7 one-man shows, and every single one of them came to me. I'm always reading bios, and I'm always trying to figure out who to do next. And it's the craziest thing, but you're reading a bio or 4 or 5 bios at a time, and then some character just comes to you in your dream. And that's the way it is, and that's the way Audie Murphy was. 3 years ago or so, a lot of libraries since I do historical characters, I do a lot of libraries. About 3 years ago, I read that most of the libraries in California, in the summer reading, they do themes. They have themes for summer reading for the kids mostly. And the theme that most libraries in Southern California were doing was every hero has a story. And I read that in an email about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, didn't think anything of it. I thought, but in my mind, I thought, I should come up with something maybe hero-related, then I can book it. You know, I can make some money. And I go to sleep and wake up, and it's one of those dreams, the very last thought you have before you wake up. And I didn't dream about Audie Murphy. All of a sudden, the name Audie Murphy just pops in my skull as soon as I'm waking up. I go, and I just started researching. I'm going, yeah, this is where I'm going to go. So it comes to you. So that's how Audie, but I've always loved Audie, you see. I was a kid in the 60s, man, who didn't love Audie Murphy. And you ought to read his book. It's really wonderful. When you think about it, you have to read it knowing that he had a ghostwriter with him. Audie didn't have a lot of education. Very, very bright man. A very intelligent man. And interestingly enough, his friend Skip, who actually wrote the book, was like a Harvard scholar. And they were inseparable. They were like best friends for like 20 years, 25 years. So it's interesting. Here Audie got through 5th grade. And his best friend is this, graduate Harvard, highly intellectual. So when you read the book, you got to realize that the book was written by this intellectual who's taken Audie's story and with a lot of Audie in it. And but you can certainly feel the essence of Audie in reading the book. And you get that from the movie too, the Hell and Back movie. Farmersville's where Audie's from, and we did it for their parade, the Audie Murphy parade. And they do a flyover. I mean, it's a big deal. And his sister is still alive, and she was there with her daughter, and they sat in the front row. And I was scared to death, because you think, I hope she likes me, And she did. She was a sweet, wonderful lady. And afterwards, she came up and we talked for a long while. And she says, that it just reminded me of so many things. And I thought, well, I guess that's successful if I'm reminding her of things and she's not thinking that didn't happen or that didn't happen, So it was an honor. It was just a tremendous honor. I'm going back actually in April, back to Farmersville. I don't know who I'm doing it for, but they want me to go back and do it again. Number of medals it's like 31, something like that. But he also so he basically won, but they're doubles of things. He got 3 Purple Hearts, he got 3 Silver Stars, 2 Bronze Stars. But when you look at that photo, the one that made him famous, the one that was on the cover of Life magazine, 45. I mean, he's a young boy with so much. But he also won, he won the Congressional Medal of Honor, which is the highest honor that our country can give. But he also won the highest honor that the French government can give, and the highest honor that the Belgian government can give. And these are very high honors. Every character takes a different amount of time. It took a long time to figure out what to do. I read several bios, and I had no idea how to do this. I needed a point of view. And obviously, Audie was only 18, 19 when he did this, and I'm well beyond that. But then it occurred to me that he would be shooting a film, and in between shots, the press would show up, and the press never wanted to ask him about the movie. The press wanted to ask him about the war, and so that gave me my narrative for you, so I can come out and you're the press. And and I can be a grown-up, and so that laid it out. And once you had that, then the writing of it only took a few days, but it took a long time to come. It takes longer to figure out what your point of view is, and once you figure it out, then the writing actually kind of does itself. You don't have to do anything. You just have to be open. So I spend more time just relaxing and try to be open, and then as you're saying the words are what do it to you. I'm often asked to perform for schools or retirement centers. I do George Burns, so I'm asked to perform a lot of places, and then it's usually at the end of the conversation, after they book the date and everything, they tell me that they don't have any money, and you hear that a lot, especially from schools and whatnot. So what I've done is, and you do as many of those shows as you possibly can, because you just simply should. But what we've done is we've created a GoFundMe campaign to raise some extra money so that you can take the time and do some of these other schools and places that simply don't have any money. And so we have a little, there's some information about the GoFundMe campaign in that little frame back there. And there's a little box if you care care to contribute, but that'd be appreciated. I'm going to stick around. I spent all day making cookies and no, the ladies did all this wonderful work, so come on over and enjoy, and let's